Hello, this is Miranda Powell coming with you with Chapter 17, Fraud in E-Commerce. The learning objectives are understand e-commerce fraud risk, take measures to prevent fraud in e-commerce, and detect e-business fraud. So what is e-business? E-business uses information technology and electronic communication networks to exchange business information and conduct paperless transactions. It can be accessed through web browsers, aka the internet, e-business calls, virtual private networks, or also known as VPNs, and other specialized lives. E-commerce risks inside organizations. Many of the most serious e-commerce fraud risk comes from within the organization. Fraudsters find ways to bypass IT controls and other security measures. Programmers and technical support personnel have super user access to systems they can create and maintain, which this means unlimited access to corporate data. More than 1/3 of network administrators admitted to snooping into HR records, layoff lists, and customer database, as well as 88% saying they would take sensitive data if they were fired. Data theft is the first concern because data have many useful attributes. They can be converted to cash through secondary transactions, such as stolen personal information, such as credit card numbers, can be sold or misused. Information is replicable, which allows a fraudster to copy the data versus having to remove it as traditional fraud requires. This is why e-commerce frauds often go undetected for long periods of time. Third, data can be transferred fast and easily to anywhere in the world. Cell phones and VPNs make detection very difficult. Lastly, many managers lack the technical expertise to prevent and detect data theft. Passwords are often the Achilles heel of many systems because the selection of the password is left to the end user and is not fully controlled. Common passwords are usually personal information such as a mother's maiden name, children's birthdays, hobbies, or pet names. Hackers use social engineering techniques to access passwords. For example, hackers will impersonate technical support and/or send emails asking for login credentials. They will often say something like, "This is technical support and we have been monitoring your account. It appears that there is a hacker trying to access your account. Let's start by verifying your username and password." Many users use the same password across multiple platforms, such as to internal controls or to internet sites. Sniffing is the logging, filtering, and viewing of information as it passes through a network line. It is a common method of gathering information from encrypted communications, such as emails. Sniffing is done easily on most networks by hackers that run freely available applications. An example would be Wireshark software. A recent scam technique used on business travelers is called war trapping. Hackers will go to known business traveler locations, such as airports, and set up free internet access points. The business traveler will think they are hooking up to the airport's free Wi-Fi. However, while they are connected to the hacker's Wi-Fi, the hacker sniffs through passwords and other protected information. Now to talk about e-commerce risks outside the organization. In 2009, hackers stole 130 million credit cards from one location. Albert Gonzalez, a 28-year-old, used SQL to get around corporate firewalls and then stealing credit and debit card information. Gonzalez was then sentenced to 20 years in federal prison for his actions. Another instance is in 2013, Target was hacked, which resulted in hackers stealing over 40 million credit card numbers and 70 million addresses and phone numbers. This resulted in Target spending $61 million in a period of 3 months on investigation. However, the most significant e-commerce fraud was when Equifax was hacked in 2017. Essentially, every American with any credit history was affected. Viruses come in 3 varieties. True viruses attach themselves to existing programs on a computer. These were popular in the 80s and 90s, but are now used less by hackers. The internet worm is in a self-contained program that's spread via direct transfer, email, or through another mechanism. Internet worms are today's largest threat. Lastly, viruses may be concealed in what is known as a Trojan horse. A Trojan horse is a program that claims to do something useful, but also performs hidden actions. Spyware, similar to a Trojan horse, installs monitoring software in addition to regular software that a user downloads or buys. For example, music and video sharing sites are some of the worst spyware. Phishing is a commonly used method by hackers to extract personal information and is done by sending an email or pop-up message to users asking for personal information in creative ways. For example, the hacker might send an email impersonating technical support to a company employee. There has also been a recent impersonation of the PayPal site. Spoofing changes the information in email headers or IP packets. Email headers are created by clients and are extremely easy to forge. Falsified identity is a significant risk in e-business. Public and private key encryption technology is one of the best ways to prevent falsified identity. Bust-outs are a fraud risk for e-business as well. Instead of running a brick-and-mortar store, the fraudster will establish a false website, which can then grab confidential information. Due to the rapidly changing tactics of perpetrators and new opportunities presented by changing protocols and technology, e-commerce fraud is likely to remain a major problem in the future. Preventing fraud in e-commerce. Preventing fraud in any business setting is about reducing or eliminating the fraud triangle: pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. One of the greatest fallacies of e-commerce security is a prevention measure known as security through obscurity. Security through obscurity is a tactic of keeping security strategies, encryption algorithms, and processes secret in the effort to confuse attackers. Like puzzles and mazes, obscurity only heightens the challenge to many hackers. Instead, companies should employ robust, time-tested security methods. One of the best ways to prevent fraud in e-business settings is to focus on reducing opportunities, usually through the implementation of appropriate internal controls. In traditional businesses, internal controls involve 5 different elements. Then I use a mnemonic known as CRIME to remember these: the control environment, risk assessment, control activities or procedures, information and communication, and monitoring. In e-business, the first 3 elements are often the most important, and that's what I will talk about next. The control environment. The essence of effectively controlled organization lies in the attitude of their management. If management believes that control is important, others in the organization will respond by consequently observing established controls. On the other hand, if it is clear to employees that management is only giving lip service to the idea of controls, the organization's control objectives will almost certainly not be achieved and fraud is more likely to occur. A critical component of the control environment in an e-business setting are the personnel who design and use the system. Remember, the tone at the top is the most important factor in control effectiveness. Next is risk assessment. A key part of the assessment focuses on the control environment of those organizations. Another part identifies key risks in the electronic exchange of information and money so that control procedures can be installed. Procedures that counter the risk of data theft, sniffing, unauthorized access to passwords, falsified identity, spoofing, customer impersonation, false websites, and email or website hijacking. A specialized branch of risk assessment is intrusion detection. A security audit includes an investigation into technology, processes, controls, and other factors at a client. Control activities. Control activities are the policies and procedures that ensure the necessary actions are taken to address risk and fraud. Control activities generally fall into the following 5 types: adequate separation of duties, proper authorization of transactions and activities, adequate documents and records, physical control over assets and records, and independent checks on performance. Adequate separation of duties is one of the most common frauds in purchasing and sales transactions are kickbacks and briberies. In e-business, this control is useful for making sure that individuals who authorize transactions are different from those who execute them. Segregation of duties can help prevent kickbacks and bribery because if the employees don't have complete control of transactions. Next is proper authorization of transaction and activities. Every transaction must be properly authorized. The most common authorization controls are passwords, firewalls, digital signatures and certificate, and biometrics. An example of biometric use would be an iris and retina scanner, fingerprint scanners, and voice tone scanners. Adequate documents and records. Documents and records are physical objects where transactions are entered and summarized, such as sale invoices, purchase orders, employee time cards, and checks. In e-business, the lack of hard copy documentation creates opportunity for fraud. The primary electronic transaction in document control is encryption. Encryption can help protect confidential and private information from being sniffed or stolen. Physical control over assets and records. Highly computerized companies need to go to special lengths to protect computer equipment, programs, and data files. Sometimes physical operations that the system is placed in an isolated location with only high-level security access. Many firms use third-party providers known as off-site location of services. However, new technology has allowed cloud-based architects that provide speed and reliability. Independent checks on performance. As with traditional business, a key component in e-business controls is the careful and continuous review of the other four components, the independent checks and internal verification. Organizations should always conduct checks on their e-business partners. Gaining an understanding of management's motivation is important in order to prevent fraud. In particular, 3 items must be examined: backgrounds, motivations, and decision-making influence. Detecting e-business fraud. Data-driven fraud detection, in which the types of fraud that can occur are identified, and then technology and other activities are used to look for fraud symptoms. Data-driven fraud detection. Endeavor to understand the business of operations of the organization, identify what frauds can occur in the operation, determine the symptoms that the most likely frauds would generate, use databases and information systems to search for those symptoms, analyze the results, and investigate the symptoms to determine if they are being caused by fraud. Technical knowledge and experience. Many hackers use tools that were originally written to troubleshoot networks rather than to hack into systems. Fraud investigators who specialize in e-commerce need to understand the tools and methods that perpetrators use. Examples of the knowledge needed to catch fraudsters in secure systems are knowledge of web servers, email clients and servers, and intrusion programs such as Nmap and Wireshark, knowledge of Unix or Linux, knowledge of the security strengths and weaknesses in Windows, knowledge of computer scripts that monitor logs and systems for potential break-ins, and knowledge of intrusion detection system, or IDS, is on the market today. This concludes my presentation. I hope this helps summarize Chapter 17 for you and you learned something from my presentation. Thank you.